Hi everyone. Today's episode is sure to blow your socks off. I have 3 stories that reveal fascinating information that will make you wonder if the things you know are really true. You might even reconsider everything you've ever learned. But first, please snuggle up and pull your socks up tight, then get to know that subscribe button. Thanks. Now let's get into the stories. My life completely changed, and essentially all came crashing down the year I went camping for a few days in Yosemite. It was late May of 2008, and I was feeling depressed. I had just broken up with my girlfriend and basically felt like I was at the end of my ropes. So I decided to go on a road trip from San Francisco all the way to Yosemite, which was essentially a 200-mile drive straight east. If you've never been there, Yosemite is quite literally in the middle of nowhere. There are no cities within miles of it, and basically only one main road that leads into and out of it. I arrived around noon on a Saturday and immediately set up camp in the Upper Pines campground. I had all of the stuff I needed and I was ready to relax for the next 2 days before going back home on Monday. The campground was pretty empty when I arrived. Maybe about 10 to 15 other campsites were occupied. I started a small fire and I began cooking lunch when I noticed a young couple setting up a tent about 50 yards from me. As I ate my food, an older couple with 2 dogs arrived and set up camp right next to me. They seemed nice enough, so we exchanged pleasantries as they unpacked their stuff. After they finished, I watched as they walked over to the trail to start hiking. I finished eating and decided to take a walk myself. I walked along the trail for about 10 minutes, taking in the sights, when I saw something odd off in the distance. It looked like something standing on top of one of the rock formations that jutted out from the ground. At first, I thought it was just an optical illusion because it was so far away and in a place that would be nearly impossible to get to. But as I continued to look at it, it seemed to be moving closer. It also looked like whatever it was stood on 2 legs instead of 4, like a normal animal would. Whatever this thing was disappeared behind another rock formation, and then reappeared again, and then disappeared completely. This made me incredibly curious, and so I decided to speed up my pace towards it. I got closer in about 10 minutes and looked towards where it had been, but saw nothing. It was at this point that I realized how quiet it was all around me. Usually when you're in nature, you hear birds chirping or the wind blowing through the trees, but it was completely silent here, except for my own breathing. I decided to continue walking down the trail to see if I could find whatever this thing was. So I kept going until the trail ended, and then opened up into a clearing with another trail branching off to the right. I'm pretty sure I'd seen the couple from before going that way. As soon as I took a few steps onto this new trail, I heard something slam on the ground behind me, like a rock being thrown. I turned around immediately and scanned the surroundings, but didn't see anything out of place. No branches were moving or leaves rustling. Nothing was moving. After a few seconds, I decided to keep going and see if whatever it was I had seen before had followed me. I didn't see anything, so I kept walking for about 5 minutes when I came across a small clump of trees growing tightly next to each other. As I stood there wondering how they had come to grow that way, I noticed something on the ground just beyond one of the trees that looked like a stick, but it was white in color, which was intriguing. So I walked closer to it, and when I got close enough to pick it up, this creature that I can only describe as a monster appeared from behind the tree right next to me. It was tall, at least 8 feet, had gray skin, black eyes, and no nose. Nothing that you could call a normal mouth either. Just this opening where its face met its neck. It also had long fingers with sharp claws instead of hands. Shockingly, the creature was so startled by me that it let out this screeching sound and ran away. I was too shocked to move for about 20 seconds, but when I snapped out of it, I booked it back to my campsite. The older couple from before were just returning from their hike as I arrived. They asked me if everything was all right because they said it looked like I had seen a ghost. I must have been white as a sheet. I blurted out all that had happened, and the couple seemed genuinely concerned for me. I'm not sure if they were concerned at that point because they believed me or because they thought I was having some sort of an episode. The husband offered to sit with me the rest of the night if I wanted him to. but after a while, it felt much better, and we all relaxed and continued about our respective businesses, just sitting and relaxing at our sites. And then at around 9:30 at night, we both heard the loud noise of something slamming into the trees behind us. It made a noise that even shook the ground, which scared the crap out of everyone. The one dog belonging to the couple started barking in the direction of the noise and wouldn't stop. So the husband got up to see what was going on, and there, behind the trees, was the same thing I had seen earlier, and it started throwing rocks at him and the dog. We could even hear them hitting from where we were. He ran back to his campsite, and I watched as the thing chased him back, but it continued running towards the trail that we had been on earlier. I then watched it follow the trail until it reached a bend where it disappeared into the forest. We never saw or heard from it again after that. The husband and wife packed their things instantly, though, said goodbye, and drove off in their car. They gave me a look like they knew what I was talking about now. I stayed on the rest of the night by myself, but I didn't sleep a wink. I still don't know why or how I even did that. The next morning, I packed up my stuff and I left as quickly as possible. Needless to say, I haven't been back to Yosemite since then because that completely ruined the experience for me. And no, this thing was not a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot, or whatever people call them. It was something else entirely. It almost looked like an alien with its gray skin and black eyes. But whatever this thing was, it wasn't normal at all. I've been camping and hiking all over the country, and I've never experienced anything like this. Whatever it was, it wanted us out of that campground, and it did everything in its power to scare us away. I was investigating a case from a local ranch complaining of dead cattle. If a rancher loses an animal to predation, they're supposed to report it. A big part of my job is trying to minimize the conflict between ranchers and wildlife. I take it pretty seriously. It's a big part of why I got into this line of work. I want to help preserve nature as best I can, but I don't like to see ranchers lose their livestock either. This particular situation was an odd one. The rancher reported several missing cattle as well as several injured ones that he was forced to euthanize. The injuries on the cattle didn't make sense. There were broken legs and head trauma, not something I would expect from a bear, a wolf, or a mountain lion. The cattle would have scratches and sometimes puncture wounds on their sides, but it wasn't severe enough damage to cause death. I took his reports, but I didn't have much in the way of solutions for him. At least, not until I could figure out what the predator was. I told him to call me the next time he found a dead or injured cow in the pasture, because I wanted to look at it for myself. I got there, and just as he had described, there was a cow lying dead in the pasture. The rancher told me 3 others had gone missing that night, but there were no signs of them. I examined the cow. There was dried blood originating from the nose and the mouth. The cow's skull had been caved in on one side. 3 of its 4 legs were most certainly broken, and there were what looked like claw marks on either side of its back. I thought I might have some answers after seeing the cow myself, but I didn't. The cow hadn't been eaten, and predators that go to that much effort to kill a cow definitely don't leave a meal like this. The rancher and I drove around the fence line looking for some place a large predator could get in. I will say wolves and lions can easily get under and over fences, but this didn't look like the work of either. We thought maybe there was a break in the fence and an aggressive bison had gotten in. That's about the only animal out there that could do damage like that. But the fence was intact. I didn't have much advice for the rancher other than to set up trail cams. It took a couple of months to finally catch something on one of those cams. The rancher showed up to my station with the photos that he got off the trail cam, and things made even less sense than before. There were no signs of a predator. It looked like the cow fell straight out of the sky. That would explain the head trauma and the broken legs, but it didn't explain how the cow got in a situation where it was falling from the sky. All of us in the station were huddled around these photos, trying to make sense of it. One of the ranchers takes a quick look and said he knew what it was. He said it was a thunderbird. The natives talk about them. They have for years. Most people think they don't exist anymore, but they do. Granted, there aren't many of them left. You'll see them right before a storm or right after. But nobody believed him. Most of us thought it was a joke. After that, somebody claimed it could have been an alien abduction, and everybody laughed except for the rancher. Still, the situation bothered me. I couldn't come up with a logical explanation as to what exactly was happening to this rancher's cattle. I thought about it for a few weeks, and I couldn't come up with one dang thing. I ended up driving out to the rancher's property to talk with him again. Not that I thought I was going to find answers. When I arrived, there was a for sale sign at the end of the driveway. The rancher said he was moving his whole operation. He said the cows weren't safe there, and he didn't feel safe anymore either. I had really hoped that he hadn't latched on to the idea of aliens because I knew of some old farmers who had, and they had turned out to be nutcases. And then he showed me a photo. He said that after that ranger said what he said about the Thunderbird, the farmer looked back at all of his reports of missing or dead cattle, and then he checked the weather records. The incidents with the cows lined up with the thunderstorms. During the next thunderstorm, he drove out to the pasture and he finally saw the creature harming his cows. He showed me the photo. It was hard to make out against the backdrop of the storm, but it did look like a giant bird. A bird as big as a bus. It was unbelievable. The photo wasn't great quality. I tried to zoom in on its face, but it was difficult to see. It had a reptilian quality to it, though. It almost looked like a cross between an eagle and a dinosaur. I didn't know what to say to him. I didn't have any ideas on how to get rid of this thing or even what exactly it was. The rancher said he didn't want to live anywhere near it. He said he couldn't sleep at night knowing that that thing was out there. I don't blame him. I never saw the bird myself, but I dug into it a bit. It seems there are stories out there, just like the ranchers. Stories of farm animals with blunt trauma and broken legs. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens. I'm assuming the birds were intending to eat the cows, but for whatever reason, they slipped out of their grasp. Anyway, that's the only explanation that I can come up with. As a skeptic, I've always been hesitant to believe in things like aliens and UFOs. But one experience I had on the Appalachian Trail in Virginia completely changed my perspective. It was then that I became a full-blown believer in extraterrestrial life. I was hiking through the Appalachian Trail in Virginia, enjoying the beautiful scenery and fresh air. It was a gorgeous day, and I had been hiking for hours, just taking in the sights and the sounds of the forest. I was alone and enjoying the solitude, but little did I know that I was about to have an encounter that would change my life forever. I'm an avid hiker, and I had been planning this trip for months. I'd always been fascinated by the Appalachian Trail, and I wanted to experience it firsthand. I was physically fit and well prepared for the journey, but I had no idea what was in store for me. As I was walking, I felt a strange presence around me. It was as if something was watching me from the shadows. I tried to shake off the feeling and focus on the beautiful scenery, but the feeling persisted. And then I saw something strange in the sky. It was a bright light, moving quickly and erratically. First, I thought it was a plane or a helicopter or even a drone, which isn't even allowed. But as it got closer, I realized it was something else entirely. It was a disc-shaped object, hovering in the air, just a few feet above the trees. I was just staring at the object, trying to figure it out, and it was strange, too, because it was completely silent. There was also no wind, but the trees and the bushes around it were rustling as if it was creating a vortex of air. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out from the craft and completely surrounded me. I felt as if my body was being lifted off the ground and pulled into the ship. I couldn't move or scream or anything. Inside the ship, I was surrounded by beings that I could only describe as aliens. They were tall and slender with large heads and big black eyes. They didn't speak, but I could feel their thoughts in my mind. They were studying me, brutally probing me. I was terrified. As they continued their examination, I started to feel intense pain. It was like they were cutting into my skin and probing my organs. I felt every bit of it. I tried to scream, but I couldn't even open my mouth. It's a memory and an experience that I will struggle with for the rest of my life. I was beyond scared. I wanted it to stop. I didn't know how, though, how to make it happen, or how much I could take, and I was afraid that they, or the pain of it, would kill me. The aliens seemed to be taking samples of my flesh, probably for my DNA, and they were using machines and tools that I couldn't even begin to understand. I didn't know how much longer I could take it. After what felt like hours, they released me, and I found myself back on the trail. I was disoriented, and I had no comprehension of what had just happened. I stumbled through the woods trying to make sense of it. And then when I finally made it back to civilization, I went to the local police station to report what had happened. They were skeptical, to say the least. They told me to get off the trail, go home, and get some rest. I guess they assumed that I was ill-prepared for the trail. I did some research and I found out that other people had reported similar encounters with aliens. They described the same creatures that had abducted me, and many of their details matched mine. I can't tell you how relieved I was to realize that I wasn't alone and that there was something out there. At least that's what I was thinking with these other reports. I started to look deeper into the alien phenomenon, and I found out about a government agency that was investigating these sightings. They'd been keeping tabs on aliens for years and had supposedly even contacted them. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to do with this information, so I basically did nothing. My belief is that we truly don't know what's out there. We're helpless against the real powers that are at play. It was a humbling and terrifying experience. I'll never be the same. In the weeks and months that followed, I continued to research alien phenomenon. I never had another encounter with them, but I always feel that they're out there, watching us, studying us. It's a strange and unsettling feeling, but it fills me with a sense of wonder and awe. Looking back on the encounter, I realize how lucky I was to survive. I had come face to face with something beyond our understanding, something that most people will never see in their entire lives. It was an experience that left me with more questions than answers, though. What else is out there? What else do we not know?